All right, so here we have the rational expression x to the third power minus 5x squared minus 24x over x to the third plus x squared minus 72x. And it tells us to write an equivalent expression and state the domain. So first, when we're writing an equivalent expression, it's the same thing as simplifying. So you might see the instructions as either write an equivalent expression or as simplify the following rational expression. Now, before I show you guys how to simplify or write an equivalent expression to this rational expression, I'm gonna break it down in simple terms so you guys can understand the thought process that goes behind this. So before we look at the rational expression, let's look at this rational number 12 over 16. So we're gonna simplify this, and I know that you guys are thinking, you can probably easily know that this is 3/4, but I'm gonna show you guys the thought process behind it. So we're gonna split this up into factors of 12 and factors of 16. So we're gonna expand numbers that multiply into 12 and then on our numerator, and then numbers that multiply into 16 on our denominator. So if we did 2 times 2 times 3, that would give us 12, right? 2 times 2 is 4, times 3 is 12. And then if we did 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, that would give us 16. So 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, and then times 2 one more time, that's 16. So now that we have it written out in factors, what we're going to do is we're going to cross off like terms, right? Because 2 divided by 2, cancel that out. 2 divided by 2, that's 1, right? So we're going to cancel those out. So what we're left with is 3 over 2, and that is 3. And then 2 times 2 is 4. So what we're left over is 3/4. We're going to do very similar process when we are simplifying a rational function. We are going to factor the numerator, factor the denominator, and then eliminate terms that can cancel each other out. So let's get started. First, let's factor out x to the third power minus 5x squared minus 24x. So I can already factor out an x, right? They all have x, so I can factor out an x, and then I'm left with x squared minus 5x minus 24, right? And you can confirm it. X times x is x to the third. X times negative 5x is negative 5x squared. And then x times negative 24 is negative 24x. So now what you're going to do is you're going to factor this quadratic function. And that is going to be very simple. So I'm going to have x times, and then two numbers that multiply into negative 24, but add up to negative 5 are going to be the numbers negative 8 and positive 3. So x plus 3, x minus 8. If you were to multiply this out, you would end up with your original number. You guys should know how to factor, so I'm not going into detail on that. So I have now x times x plus 3 times x minus 8 as my numerator. Now I'm going to go ahead and factor my denominator, right? So I'm going to erase this real quick. I already did that. So now I have x to the third plus x squared minus 72x. Again, I can factor out an x, right? And then I'm left with x squared plus x minus 72. And then the numbers that multiply into negative 72, we have 8 times 9. 9 has to be positive. So then this becomes x times x plus 9 times x minus 8, right? If you were to multiply this out, you would end up with your original function. So that's our denominator written out. x plus 9, x minus 8. Now, I'm not going to go into factoring because you guys should know how to factor. I'm just doing it very quickly to save time. So now let's look at what our result is. So we have x times x plus 3 times x minus 8 over x times x plus 9 times x minus 8. So you can look at terms that are the same, and they would cancel out because they would be equal to 1, and you don't have to write 1 in a function, right? So these x's cancel each other out, and then these x minus 8s cancel each other out. And then we're left with x plus 3 over x plus 9. This is the simplified or an equivalent equation expression to our original rational function. And Now, I forgot to think about the domain, but the domain, you're going to look at the original denominator. So you're going to look at the original denominator, and the terms that would make that equal to 0 is what's going to give you your domain. So here, if we look back at, before we crossed everything out, we had x equals 0, x plus 9 equals 0, and x minus 8 is equal to 0 as our denominator. So those are all the terms that x does not equal. So x does not equal 0, negative 9, and positive 8. Those are the numbers that are excluded from the domain. The domain is all real numbers except for 0, negative 9, and positive 8. All right. Now one more. Let's look at this function right here. So you're going to factor this function as well. You're going to factor the denominator and factor the numerator, and then you are going to cancel out what you can. So another way that if you don't know how to factor, what you can do is you can go into your graphing calculator, graph the function. So you guys might not know how to factor 4 minus x squared. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to graph that. 4 minus x squared. I'm going to click graph. If you look at this graph, it has zeros right here at x equals negative 2 and at x equals positive 2, right? So let's look at that. And something to think about, the parabola is opening downwards. So I know this is going to be a negative function. So I know that negative 2 and positive 2 are factors of this function. So, and if you look at the table, we have negative, when x is negative 2, our output is 0. And when x is positive 2, our output is 0. So those are the zeros of the function. Those are the factors. So the factors of 4 minus x squared, remember, it's a negative function, so we have to include a negative. And then we have x plus 2 times x minus 2 over. Now, if you factor x squared plus 3x minus 10, two numbers that multiply to negative 10 and add up to positive 3 are going to be positive 5, so x plus 5, and negative 2. So this is the factored form of our denominator. So we're going to write that over here. So we have x plus 5 over x minus 2. These cancel each other out, right? So can't forget about that negative. So our final solution is negative x plus 2 over x plus 5. This is an equivalent expression or a simplified form of this expression. Now, these terms right here, this was the denominator factored out. So if you were to solve, the numbers that make our denominator equal to 0 are negative 5 and positive 2. So that means that our domain is x does not equal negative 5 and positive 2.